So, hello everyone, good evening. I hope you all are doing well. We thank you to all who are there here, who are wanted to join here, and we are very pleased to welcome you all to 10th edition of Vodka Shots. Before we start, we just wanted to quickly introduce ourselves. So, I can start. I'm Harshita. I've joined ThoughtWorks 1.5 years back as a grad. It's been a great learning journey for me since the start. Yeah, that is pretty much about myself. Usha, do you want to go next?
Yes. Hey, hello, folks. Good to have you all in. So this is Usha, and it's been like 1.5 years since I'm in ThoughtWorks. And ThoughtWorks is the first company I started with. And this 1.5 years, it's been like a great learning journey, a great exploration journey, both on tech and fun side. It's been pretty good. That's more about me. Over to you, Divya.
Yeah, hello folks. I am Divya Polaki and I'm a 2020 graduate, and it's been almost 9 months that I have joined ThoughtWorks. Currently, I'm working for a health-based project in which I can encounter a constant learning. So that is all about me. What are you, Manogna?
Thanks, Divya. Hello, everyone. This is Manugna Kuppa. Even I have joined as a grad. I'm a 2020 passed out, and I have 1.4 years of experience. And as a grad, I've had a great exposure in ThoughtWorks until now. And this is my second Vodka Shots hosting. And then I'm really happy to see you all here. So back to you, Harshita and Usha.
Yes. That was like very crisp introduction of the organizers. Sounds cool. Like we all are of same years of experience. It's fun. Today we all have connected for vodka. So before jumping into the session, let's take a step back and understand what vodka is. So vodka stands for value-oriented discussion on quality analysis. So basically what we do is we all who are QA enthusiasts, QA learners, QA devotees just come together as a group and kind of explore around the software testing present. This vodka happens every alternate month, and ideally, like before this pandemic situation, it used to happen in ThoughtWorks Hyderabad office, but now we know the pandemic situation, so we are kind of conducting it in a webinar mode. So for today's session, we have two of our most talented, experienced, energetic QA speakers who will be taking the talk. So let's just have their quick introductions. Over to you, Preeti.
Thanks, Susha. Hi, everybody. I'm Preeti. So I have been in ThoughtWorks for around 6 years now, and overall I have 10 plus years of experience. Being here, I've had the opportunity to work into different areas of testing, which includes functional, non-functional, even business analysis and project management sometimes. So there is no boundary to what I can learn and I can explore over here. That is a little bit about myself, and I'll pass it over to Null.
Cool. Can you hear me? Yes. So I'm not prepared for this. I didn't expect this. I was thinking like they'll share the slides and then you'll get the introduction, but I'll read whatever is there on the slides. Okay. Cool. I'm Nalini Kant. People at ThoughtWorks call me Null. So I've been a QA around last 9 years, having spent 7 years at ThoughtWorks doing various types of testings, manual automation, performance, security. I have a huge interest in security, currently playing security community lead for ThoughtWorks India and a product owner for a QA team on an account. So that's a bit about me.
Great introduction, Nal and Preeti. Like it's kind of all the testing words, so it's too good. So for today's session, right, it's about quality strategy. Nal and Preeti would be driving around and telling their experiences, their learnings as part of today's session. I just hope you all folks have lots of learning. So Nal and Preeti, over to you. The stage is all yours.
Oh, yes. Just a request, if we have less participants, can we allow them all to talk?
Yeah, Preeti. So anyways, we have till workshop, right? So before we get there, I think we can do that since we have very less participants, but I think someone needs to moderate.
I will take care of it.
Yeah. Less meaning we have good enough. Yeah, it's just like I think it is manageable with 30 people if we can do it in a discussion mode. Yeah. Cool.
Maybe I think folks can start pulling them up in the meanwhile, but people stay muted while we speak, just not to cross talk. Cool. Priti, as you get the presentation up, I'll share a quick poll for the audience. So, did you see the poll?
Yes, no.
The poll is untitled.
Yeah, that's the bug. I'll wait for next 30 seconds before you folks answer this question. Okay, last 10 seconds. Cool. I'm ending this poll. So there are 25 responses. Well, out of which I think we will not be able to see the results. We have around 40% of the people who have already done some quality strategy and have experience with it, and 60% of the people have never done it. But 92% of the people in the room think that it has to be done, whereas the remaining 8% of children that trade whether to decide that is required for a project or not. Well, yes, Preeti, let's get started.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Cool. Move to agenda. So we already introduced that, so I was talking about this slide. So yeah. So quickly on the agenda today, so we are going to do an exercise. So that is the most important core part of the entire session that we're doing today. And before going there, we're going to talk about some part of what waterfall, what has been a waterfall methodology, and what is agile methodology. What are the QA dynamics that are involved there, and test plan versus test strategy, or QA plan versus QA strategy that we generally get confused, and we'll try to talk through some of them, and we'll then go through an architecture of an application, and then we'll do a small workshop. So we feel really happy that we have less number of participants, and we could get you to talk. So that's something that we really wanted to do, but we don't know how many number of participants that we'll have today. So that would be the part of workshop, and at the last, we'll have the summary. At the end, if you have any questions, you want to discuss anything apart from what we have discussed today, you can stay back maybe for 10-15 minutes. I think the organizers and the speakers would be happy to stay back and answer any questions. So we ideally have the time from 6 to 7, but if you're interested, you can stay a little bit after the session as well. So yes, let's get started with the next slide. This is one of the beautiful waterfalls that I've seen in recent times. We're not going to talk about that waterfall. We're going to talk about waterfall methodology. So I know how many of you have worked with waterfall methodology. So if I start asking a lot of questions about waterfall methodology, the entire waterfall methodology has this testing phase at the end, which actually makes waterfall methodology to deliver a lot of test deliverables when compared to agile methodology. So this is just one point that I wanted to tell. We can talk about it later if you want to go more deeper in the nitty-gritties of what waterfall methodology really does to testing. And the only thing is it has a lot of test deliverables, the other day on one of the chat rooms where we have the entire QA community, I was looking at a question and I was telling Preeti, did you hear traceability matrix? Because it's been 7 years in ThoughtWorks. I've never used traceability matrix. It is one of the high value deliverable in waterfall methodology. So there are so many deliverables like that when it comes to waterfall methodology, out of which we are gonna touch one such deliverable and how to do it in an agile way and use just one deliverable to enhance your entire quality of the product or a project that you're working on. So that's what we're going to talk about. Next slide, please. So the next part, when it comes to agile, the 4 important values of agile: individuals and interactions over process and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. So why I'm talking about these values right now is I'll again at the end I'll come back and I'll ask you if it makes sense for you to attach these values to the workshop that we are doing today. So we're just trying to look at the QA strategy through the agile lens, and we're trying to make sure all these values are honored when we are doing this, and still creating a QA strategy and implementing that on an account or a project. Cool. Coming back, so we were talking about waterfall and agile, and even in waterfall we have a QA, agile you have a QA. So ideally, I have seen people in waterfall, following a plan, and testing comes after the development is done. Do all your experiments, test the product, rise the defects, get all the defects fixed, make sure all your requirements are matched with test cases, write all of that. And at the end, once everything is fine, you go for a release. But when it comes to Agile, I think on our project, we are pushing every day to production. We use continuous deployment, and we definitely do 3 to 4 releases in a day. But when it comes to waterfall, you need a release. And for every release, you need a test plan and how you're going to achieve your test goals. So that's every QA is going through that when I started my career, and that's how I pursued it. But when you move to SL, does that really make sense for you to go and do a test plan for a project that is releasing almost every day or even almost once in a sprint? So if your project is releasing once in a month or once in 3 months, I'm not talking about them, but most of the Agile projects these days are releasing within a very short span of time. Would making a test plan and working according to the test plan will work for us in the Agile environment? So if not, how would we look at it? How would we use this to make sure we come up with a better quality strategy and we keep all the Agile values at the same time in the quality strategy and make things possible? Preeti, anything to add?
No, carry on. So is this an open question?
No.
Okay.
That's not an open question, but that's the question with which actually we went ahead and created this for our projects. So yes. Next slide, Preeti. So you might have heard, I want you people to speak here. You might have heard these 2 terms, the test plan and test strategy. So can someone tell me what is the difference between a plan and a strategy? Are these two different things? Are these 2 one and same? Take a guess. It's completely fine.
Hey Null, this is Choyan. Yeah, both are like
Yes.
different things. Like test plan on a high level, like it will have all the details, like the scope is like by when it has to be done, and what are the like things we'll be covering. And test strategy kind of like is kind of a project management overall document which will like tell you like what are the things we'll be carrying out as part of the entire test, like what kind of unit testing, say, smoke testing, regression testing, security, performance, whatever is applicable for the project, and what will be like the quality gates, what are the entry criteria, what are the exit criteria. Those will be there in the test strategy, along with some process related stuff also, like how you want to handle the defects based on the severity and priority. So all those things comes into the test strategy.
Okay, fair answer. Anyone else want to give it a try?
Strategy mostly will include like what are you going to test or how you are going to ensure the quality of a product. Rather, plan is a kind of, you can say, an agenda on how you will be covering or when you will be covering with a defined scope and timelines.
Cool. Pretty much close answers, but if you still go back and look at plan and strategy, right, they would always look confusing because some of the things that Chayan said are overlapping. So entry-exit criteria, I might not care about them when I'm doing a strategy, but I might care about them when I'm doing a plan. So to put it basically, so again, talking about this word strategy, the word strategy is quoted when, age old, when people are going to wars and all, and coincidentally or unfortunately, Russia is fighting Ukraine today. So the strategy is a vision to achieve some objectives. So as Nagraj rightly said, here we are trying to create a quality strategy to achieve a good quality product. So that would be your vision when you're doing a strategy, and what are the things that you do when you want to go there. So that's what your strategy talks about. And planning is a set of actions associated with timelines that I want to do, and how I want to do them, or how I want to go about doing them, or making them followed by a team or something like that. And quality strategy is always a long-term vision. So when it comes to your plan, it's a short-term vision. It can be for a release, it can be for a sprint, it can be for a bug fix, it can be for a hot fix release that you're doing. So it can be for anything. So it can be short-term. And when it comes to this, the test plan is always a management document on how do you want to achieve this thing with respect to the timelines that we have. But when it comes to test strategy, as you rightly said, it's a decision-making system wherein you tell that whether I would do some type of testing or I wouldn't do some type of testing in the given current context of the product that I'm working on. So that's where it minutely differs from planning. You take a decision on what to do, what not to do in this entire scenario. So that is the difference. Viti, can you go to the next slide? So most ideally, test plan would have the major components of this along with some other components that you might want to add. It will have scope, what scope you're bounded to work when you're doing this plan. What are the resources that you require in terms of people, in terms of system and other things? What are the timelines that you're going to achieve this test plan? What is the test completeness criteria? When would you call that, hey, this is done? And what are the test deliverables? So these are some of the high level things that a test plan would contain. So can we go to next slide? When we look at test strategy, it's a vision on how one should look at thinking or testing a product or a project or account. So it asks you about what approach you're going to follow, what practices or testing types you're going to touch in the entire life cycle of this project or a product. What are the tools that you're going to use? What are the metrics that you're going to talk about? Or what are the metrics that will help you to tell you that whatever you're doing is good enough or not? And where are you going to run these tests? What environments you might want to create, not just now, but down the lane when you want to execute the testing types that you're talking about. And test strategy also talks about all the risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies that it comes associated with. We'll actually look all these things in detail today. So this is what a test plan and test strategy is. But one thing that the difference I already told you, but one thing that I want to reiterate on is, if you are thinking about doing a test plan in Agile project, I think you're trying to do something which is in waterfallish and trying to fit it in an Agile, and that will not make you productive. In turn, that will take some time away from you to create a document. So that's where you have to, if you are thinking of being truly Agile project, you have to start thinking about test strategy or QA strategy, and then you have to see when your test plan any plan that you want to do for the QA is required. So you should minimize on that, and you should start focusing more on your test strategy or quality strategy. And you should start building that vision on day one of your project. If you ask me, say on day one, we missed it. On day one, we don't even have a QA. We got a QA after 3 months into the project or after 4 months into the project. So even then, I think you should start doing that vision. Or right now, I've been in 2 years in the project, and I have never known that, you can do something like this. Today is when I first learned this. I think even today you should go and do this strategy for your project. So that's on test plan and test strategy. Over to you, Preeti, for the next part. But before we go there, any questions from anyone? Cool. I'll take that as a no, and over to you, Preeti.
Cool. Thanks, Null. So, so far we have been dealing with the theory part of it. We have learned a little bit about what is the difference between a test plan and a test strategy. So going forward in this presentation, we are going to talk mostly about the test strategy. So that is what the session is all about, right? Yeah, so we have a test application for you. And I'm very, very sure that everybody who is there in this room must have used such kind of applications at least once in their lives, and you must be familiar with it. So that's what we want to do. We want to take a familiar app and then dissect it one by one. So the application that we are going to look at today is basically this thing. It's a food delivery application. So getting all pictures and ideas in mind, right? Is there anybody who has not used it yet? Okay, kidding. Cool. So today we are going to explore this food delivery app. I'm not going to take names. You can visualize your favorite one in your mind. So let's say you are entering into a new project which deals with this, which is designing, developing a food delivery application. Okay, it could be that you're joining a new organization, or you're joining a new project in the same organization. So let's say you are a QA, and when you get into the project and I tell you, okay, this is something that we are going to develop, what are you going to test? So what are the few things that come to your mind first? Anybody?
Come on, people, we want you to talk.
Yes. Let's make this a little bit interactive. It's a very simple question. Imagine you are a QA, you are supposed to test this application. What are you going to test?
On which all devices we have to test?
All devices, yes. And? Nobody? Come on. We are all QAs.
We have to divide it into the types of testing that we would be making them from the app, like usability, acceptance, API level,
Okay.
different kind of.
Fair enough. Yes. Okay. Anything else?
Contract test might also help because your application is
Contract
retracting.
test. Okay. Okay.
Maybe we also need to focus on what kind of users were using the application.
Okay, usability testing. Okay.
And something like what kind of users and what kind of food items we have.
And we can also target accessibility part as well here.
Okay, nice. Finally, one non-functional testing. Everybody thinks about functional first. Does that give you a hint what I'm saying?
Performance and security.
See, now people are getting into performance and security. Yes, exactly. So this is what I wanted to invoke in you people. So when we get into an application, we first, try to think about what is in front of us and how to test that. And after a little bit of nudge, right, we tend to go into the what is there behind the screen, right? We get into APIs, then somebody said CDCs, we get into performance testing, security testing. So these are all the stuff that we as QAs would generally think about when we are testing an application. There are sometimes when you get a chance to be a full stack QA and do all these things, and sometimes you would be working on the front end only, and that's when your thought process gets restricted, and we start thinking about functional only test cases. Yeah, so good job people on that. I think we have covered a good number of things that we would do. But as a test strategy is just identifying the types of testing enough. So is that the only thing that constitutes a test strategy? No?
No, I think we also have to include the devices or the OS, all those stuff as well in the strategy. We have to mention those as well. Have to think of those lines as well, because also the browser compatibility stuff, right? All those also we have to take into account in the strategy.
Yes. That is again somewhere related to functional testing, right? Or non-functional testing, let's say cross-browser or accessibility testing. Okay. What else?
So from Agile's perspective, we can think of a fail faster. So you can have some consumer-driven part on the producer side, so that you don't have to worry about your regression to run. That might take a lot of time. Or you can divide your suits in smoke and regression. Some part is running in the dev environment. You have that confidence that happy path is running, and then you can have more complex scenarios in your QA environment. In that way, you can at least divide the time. Yeah.
Yes. So I'll take you back to the previous previous slides, right? So what we are talking about is very technical. We are talking about testing types, and how are we going to test it, and what devices are we going to use, what OS we are going to use. Very good. Test environments, all covered. But what about something which is slightly non-technical, I would say, like defect management, or identifying your rates, or what kind of processes that you are going to follow to achieve that quality in your product. For example, you want to do TDD or you want to do BDD. Do they also constitute as do they also can you also consider them as part of test strategy?
Yes, obviously. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So good enough. I will stop this discussion here, because we are going to discuss more on this. I think I have brought you to a place where I want you to think beyond your application, what you see, and besides what testing types you are going to apply on that application, also think about these aspects which are going to help you build a strong test strategy in your for the product that you are going to develop. Right. So what we did just now is we had a dive into the architecture. So here we said that there is a device, we will do UI testing, for example. Then there is application server, which you will interact with. And of course, when you are interacting over the web, it becomes a web service. And that's why you write API testing as well. Then the application server would in turn have storages. You may do some DB testing. So these are all the testing you're going to apply over here. So this is a good example of a monolithic architecture or monolithic application. Nowadays, if you go into the market, any modern e-commerce application would have a slightly different architecture, which we call as microservices. So diving deep into the microservice architecture, I have just taken a sample example of the same food delivery app that we have, right? So let's assume that the app looks something like this. So your application is set up on a cloud, which could be your AWS or GCP or Azure, and there are several others in the market. And each service, each feature itself is a service in your entire microservice pool. So your search is one service, your home page is one service, or there are user services which are a combination of API plus some database. Also, your product architecture, your microservices are talking to other third-party services that are there. For example, to locate a restaurant, they may use a Google map to calculate, how much far it is from your place. And for authenticating a user, you could use OAuth, or you could ask Google. There are applications right now which let you sign in using Google or Facebook or something like that. So it is a pretty complex architecture if you see. Now, and internally also you see that the services could be interacting with each other as well. So now your horizon becomes slightly broader when you are developing a test strategy as a QA, because you have to take into consideration all these things. Am I right? Yes?
Yep.
Yes. So basically we are as a QA also we are growing, because if you see a few years ago in the market, when we talked about a QA, we talked about functional testing, whether you know manual, whether you know automation. Now when you step into the QA market, and especially if you are an individual contributor in the team, you are expected to know all these bits and pieces. So that is what we are going to explore today. Any questions before I move to the next slide?
No.
Okay. Now, since we are looking at this diagram, right? Let's come up with, I'll ask you the same question again. Now what you are going to test over here?
The first thing that comes to my mind is contract testing between the.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously the individual services would be having their REST, if they're based on REST, so API testing would be there.
Yeah, not necessarily everybody is on REST, but yes, you need API.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever be it SOAP or REST, those testing. Yeah.
I would prefer a mock service for each API.
Awesome. Okay. Which is kind of your integration test.
Mock. Yeah.
Not, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So mocks for individual APIs. So I can use them with some toggle feature to switch on and off, and I can use them in regression as well.
Okay.
For API or integration.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Anything else? I would say we would use mock for definitely Google and the authenticator, because they are third-party services, and yes, we cannot test them all the time the way we want. Yeah. What else?
We can also do some kind of load test to see the scalability of the architecture and all.
Yes.
Like how many users can directly connect to one API and all. Load something like that.
Yes.
So for authentication, I see you might require a PII information. So that should also be masked. It should not be in the logs or something.
Okay. Yes. And what is the one important thing you test when you are on cloud?
Security testing.
Yes. Yes, of course. Yeah. So good that people are now navigating from functional to non-functional testing. Good to know. Yes. So from there, from here, I will move on to your test pyramid. So exactly what we were saying a few minutes ago, right? So we will have a test pyramid where we will say we will test unit, we will test integration, we will have some CDCs, we will have API testing, then user interface testing, your E2E journey test. We will also do performance and security test. And finally, at the top of the pyramid, we will do some amount of exploratory testing and other NFRs, right? Other NFRs could be something like, as you said, cross-browser testing, accessibility testing, usability testing, and there are many others. So when we are designing a test strategy, our job is to ensure that, we have covered all these areas and identify what sort of testing is required for the product that you are building. Like, for example, not every product that you have needs accessibility testing or localization testing. That doesn't mean that, once you say no to it, it will forever be a no. Let's say you are building an application over here, which is a food delivery app. Right now it operates, only in my location, say Hyderabad. Okay, tomorrow you want to extend it to the rest of India, and then you want to also make it language specific. At that point of time, you may want to, include localization testing in your test strategy. So test strategy is something that is always evolving. It doesn't stay constant. So based on what kind of requirements you are adding to your product, what kind of requirements are changing, the team dynamics, everything affects your test strategy. Yes. So this is what I wanted to tell you, folks. Next, we have the workshop. Before the workshop, any questions, or do you people have other thoughts in mind? I am reading the chat now. Okay, I take that as a no. So for the workshop, I'll quickly show you what we have in place for you. Escape is not working for me. Good. Okay, we have come up with this mural link. Null will be walking you through the workshop, but before he starts, I just want to tell you what this mural is all about, or how we are going to navigate through it. So this is a quality strategy template that we had come up with when we were designing quality strategy in our project. So we made it as a workshop and made it in such a way that, we involve the whole team when we are designing when we are designing the test strategy. It's not just the QA who is looking into it, but the entire team, because we need inputs from all people from all fields, be it testing, be it development, or be it business. Yeah. So this template is divided into parts. So the first phase is the ideate phase. And as you can see, the ideate phase talks about testing types and the practices, and what is already there in your team, and what are the things that you want to introduce newly, and you want to introduce it going forward. Just like the example of localization that I was giving. So I figured out then, when previously we were discussing, we were more in this field, the testing types, that I will test this, I will test that, but we didn't dive much deeper into the practices. We will try to do that as part of this session. Yeah. Then we have the formalized phase. So once you have identified like what are your testing types and practices that you have, you can further classify them and say whether you have already implemented it in the team, or is it something that you want to prioritize, you should implement, or you should have a discussion upon, which is the triage phase. Is it something that is nice to have? Is it something that you should do when required, or is it something that you don't need at all in your team? For example, if you don't have a UI, then there is no point of doing a UI testing or something like that. Yeah. So once we do all this, we are going to identify the test architecture and the test data. what kind of data you need and what kind of environments do you need to test, and also identify the matrix. So what is going to tell you that the thing you have tested is sufficient enough, and you are ready to give it a green signal for the customers to use it. What did I miss? Yeah, this is a defect management template. We will have a look at it later. We will also identify the tools that you are using to test. It could be your automation tools or other tools that we are using for coverage or something of that sort. Yeah, and at the end, we are going to talk about rates, which are your risk assumption issues and dependencies. Hope this is clear. Null, I'll give the control to you. You can take them through this.
Yeah, Preeti, maybe I'll. Cool. So when we were looking at doing this for our clients, we ideally did so many, algorithms, tried so many things, and finally we came back and we came here and we said like maybe this will work for us. And we tried this out with 30 odd teams. So we have seen 30 teams implementing this, and we'll tell you what we have done and also why it is important. So earlier, a quality strategy or a test plan, which is decided by some people, maybe a TL, a TD, or someone on the organization, or maybe the managers, and then it comes to you to just implement this. But here we have 4 phases. The first phase is ideate, as Preeti told. So in the ideate phase, what we do is we call the entire team. So as much as possible, we call the entire team to come in and ideate on how do you test the system? What are the practices as a team we should follow with respect to quality? What are the testing types that we should focus on? So that's what we have done, and that's what we'll be quickly doing. So every phase, since we don't have, so we do this workshop ideally for 2.5 hours in the team, but we are shortening it to like 20 minutes. So we don't do it extensively, but we'll try to put some data and we'll try to see like how we are manipulating. So once I have enough data on the particular template that I'm showing, I'll move to the next part of it. So we're not exhaustively covering everything here today, but we're trying to replicate a smaller model of what we tried to do. So to start with, like say, for example, let's take the microservices architecture that Preeti is talking about. And imagine we are all a testing team and we came together to test this particular application. So now, now that we are here and we have come to test this application, I would ask you, so there are 2 things here. We want this template to be used by the teams that are already running and any new team that comes from the scratch. So if teams are already running, they would have some existing practices and testing types that they cover. Anything new that they want to add, they put it here. But let's think that we are starting this quality strategy from scratch. And I would want to hear from you people on what do you think is a testing or a practice that is required on this team. And when you put anything here, think what happens if this practice or something is not followed. If you can write, I mean, if you can tell that as well, that should be fine. And what frequency should this testing happen is something that we need to think. Testing or practice that needs to happen. That is something that you need to think when you put something over here, because when I go to Google and say testing types, I get to see like 160, 200, 300 testing types, which includes gorilla testing, monkey testing. So a lot of those things, but do we really need to do that? Or do we have to do something that is really important for us and that's going to create a lot of value to our project? So that's what we're going to try to figure out here. So think that we're doing an MVP. I'll tell why I said as an MVP. But talk about every testing that you want to do on the system that we spoke about. So yeah, you want to just quickly tell that, hey, I want to add this testing type and the frequency and what happens if that is not there or something like that. So I'll add it here. Come on, you have to start talking because it's going to take time. I'll have to quickly move across to other areas as well. The same food microservices architecture of food delivery app. what types of testings would you want to do? You can repeat what you said
Contract
last time.
testing
Contract.
and schema
How frequently you want to do? How frequently you want to do the contract testing? You want to do it on every commit?
Every hour or yeah.
Okay, let me do it every commit.
For
And
me, I would say the API testing, like smoke
API
should.
testing.
Yeah.
And how frequently you want to run this? On every commit
So
or once in a while?
Daily.
Daily?
Yeah.
Okay. Come on, people, you told already a lot of answers. So if you answer them, I'll quickly move to the next phase.
Accessibility testing.
Okay. Or else I'll go and write all the answers that you already told me. Or at least what I remember from your conversations.
BFF test.
What is that?
What is that?
Backend for front end, like at a GraphQL layer.
Okay, got it.
I was about to say best friends forever.
Yeah. So, yeah, someone was telling me load tests. Someone is talking about security tests. So there would be a lot of things that will come in here, okay? And can someone think of any practices that you would want your team to follow? Yeah, being in ThoughtWorks for last 7 years, when we talk about practices, the first thing that comes to me is test-driven development. Anyone want to say about some practices? Anything that you see or you do in your current projects? Code coverage should always be 85%. Does anyone care about things like that? No? Cool. So being QAs, we might be aware of a lot of these things, but when we are doing this workshop with a lot of our client stakeholders and a lot of our dev teams where we have a lot of devs and POs, not every one of them know the terminology that we use or things that we do, right? So we created this mind map to give them so that we talk about some of these practices or the functional testing types and the non-functional testing types where they can choose what to do and what not to do, or they can just ask questions on, hey, what is chaos testing? You're talking about chaos engineering. What is that? So some of these things. So this is something that we have given to them, and once we do this exercise, what happens is, so we talk about everything that we added here. So we added few testing types and few practices. Maybe let's start with testing types. So your second round is gonna be more of a prioritization round on what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So we have given 6 statuses, and there is a way to do this particular formalization as well on what to start with and what not to start with. So we'll start with the first thing. So we have contract tests. So someone who said contract tests, do you say that it should be implemented, or it's a nice to have, or we do it whenever it is required, or something like that?
I think it's nice to have.
Why do you think a contract test is nice to have? Does someone in the room has a different opinion? No?
Right. So since
All
it
of
is
you agree.
client service architecture, some kind of contract testing should be mandatory because both party can change their contract at any time. So
Okay, so what do you think? So now I got contract testing, so it's between nice to have, and we know that we don't have anything implemented, so it's between these 3, nice to have or need to try as or should implement.
should implement.
Okay, anyone differ? So yeah, are you fine if I go ahead and put contract test and should implement? Because this is very, very important for any microservices architecture that we drive, because it covers all the services on how the services are talking. So maybe if we automate this, we'll have very less hassles, and we don't have to worry about the business schema changes that occurs between the messages or the bodies of the JSONs that
Got it. Got it.
the
Yeah.
calls. So, yeah. So now I got contract testing and should implement. So it is not sufficient that it comes here, but there is another example that that's here on top. Whenever anything that comes here, right, that should come with all these details. So that should come with all these details. So now I have said like, okay, now this is contract testing. We'll implement this. And the next thing is like, what is contract testing? See, tomorrow if someone is coming and looking at this board, it's not that they said contract testing and they told everything, but what is contract testing? Because this board is also acting as a medium between your stakeholders and your team. It's not just that your team is looking at it. So if your client or your PO or your PM, everyone is going to look at this. So just give a definition of contract testing. Contract, test the contract between consumer and provider. I'm just writing it in a simple manner to save time. Test the contract between consumer and provider for all the services. So the next one is like, why do you want to do this testing? Okay, it's fine. Someone came and said that, hey, we'll do contract testing, and everyone are in a good mode. So everyone said, let's do contract testing. But tomorrow, if someone else comes into the team and sees, why do we really do contract testing? Contract testing is one area, but I'll tell you, if I put TDD here and should implement, and someone comes to the team and newly sees that, they'll definitely ask me or anyone on the team, why are you doing TDD? So I've heard this question a lot of times. So write the goal that you are trying to achieve by doing this testing by writing the why answer here. Maybe maintain the synergy between your consumer and provider. So they both know the changes that are happening and stay updated. So if someone in this room hasn't heard of what contract testing is or consumer driven contract tests or any of that sorts, we can take that question at the end. But I explained a simple why on why do we want to do this. The next part is, who does this? Is it a QA who is going to write these tests on the team? Or is it a developer who writes the tests on the team? That is something that you have to decide at this level itself, because if you just decide this and if you go, then tomorrow no one would take responsibility for this. No one would pay any accountability for this. So who is gonna write this? So maybe QA team does POC and devs add them for every new service. I'm just taking an example. It can be QA does it, it can be devs does it, it can be some other team does it, like security testing. You have another external team which might be doing security testing. So that can also be a part. So it's between the providers and consumers, right? So both the providers and consumers would get impacted. When in development runs on local and CA, or when service is built, it runs on the local and CA, how automated or manual. So these are some of the important things that you need to capture when you get any testing from an ideate phase to formalize phase. So now we have done all of this. This is still not sufficient. You have to, in the same session, once you ideate on all the parts, you don't have to get owners for things that are there and nice to have or when required or out of scope. But for anything that you see in should implement, or for anything that you see in need to triage, so you definitely have to get an owner. So Null is owning this, and it's Null's responsibility on the team to make sure contract testing is implemented. So will Null do it directly? No, Null will make sure that happens. So that sort of ownership is required, because tomorrow when you look at this, you need to know who is accountable for this particular action. So that's how we'll place everything in this formalization based on your priorities. So I'll not elaborate all the cards, but if you ask me, maybe I come back here and take something else, like say for example load test. I'll take load test and I maybe put it in need to triage. Why do I put load test in need to triage? Can someone tell me? Or can someone say that, hey, they're actually doing a mistake by putting load test in need to triage?
For this application, it is should implement, but it depends on application, whether if it serves a lot of traffic and need to be evaluated, we can triage on that basis.
Yes. So the only thing that I moved load test to need to triage is because I already told you this is an MVP. And in an MVP, maybe I don't want to look at this right now. I'll triage it and I'll keep it in this triage bucket, and I'll look at it when we have gone through the MVP. We thought like, yeah, this product will be successful. Now we have to scale it. So that's when I go and look at load test. So like that, get everything, slot it in different statuses that you take care of. So put it here, everywhere. So if you say something is out of scope, like say, I'll take an example. So accessibility testing, as a company, if the client doesn't care, or as a product, you don't want to care about this right now, don't do it. But I'm just taking it as an example. Then go and put it in out of scope and justify why you are putting it in out of scope. It might not be accessibility testing, but I took it as an example because everyone does that. And definitely, I don't like it when people move it out, but that's one of the last priorities that people see, which is very important for the world. But irrespective of that, so say out of scope. So there is this one interesting status called as when required. Does someone relate to this? Why this is there? What does when required actually mean? Can someone relate to this, or have you?
Depends on
Yes,
them.
go on, Nagraj. No, go on, Nagraj.
Right. So sometimes internationalization is one of the testing. If the application is expanding across regions, and if you want to do an region-specific testing, and so at that time we can include those scenarios.
Yeah, maybe. Have you any one of you heard bug bash? We do it frequently, but we do it only when we require it. We don't do it every day. It's not automated. It's a manual meeting or a task that we prepare for a particular time, and then we go and do that, right? So anything that is like that, that goes into when required. So slot all these cards into, wherever they fit in, and follow the test pyramid that Preeti has shown. So defend your statuses and everything based on an hypothesis that you're coming from. Like say in our test pyramid, we said we're going to implement this. How can you move it to nice to have or some other place? So something like that. So this is the second part. So on this, there are 4 parts of the entire quality strategy that we're doing. One is ideate, the second one is formalize. We spoke about ideate, we spoke about formalize. What is the third one? This is a very important thing that happens out of this document or out of this board, is exactly where you go onto your project and put hands on and implement all these things. So the third phase itself is not sufficient. As we spoke, we are trying to do this in an agile way. You have to keep evolving on this. So today I kept, say for example, today I kept load test in need to triage. say after 3 months, we're done with the MVP and we are successful. We are scaling the application. You have to, come back and see that, hey, I have to now triage my load tests. I have to bring them into should implement and I have to implement them. So you need to do this continuous evaluation on top of your quality strategy. It's not a stale document that you write it on day one and you only look it after 3 years whether you have achieved everything or not. You have to keep looking at it every now and then. For example, once in a month or once in a iteration would be very, very huge, but very huge effort. But if you are having a group of sprints called as something, so you have to have a particular frequency at which you keep iterating on top of this. So this is about the formalized phase. Apart from that, we need a lot of details when we talk about testing and strategizing. How do we execute the tests and all of that? And the other important part is your test infrastructure and test data. So now that you're talking about load tests, you're talking about contract tests, you're talking about unit tests, you're talking about functional tests, where do you get all this infrastructure from? Where do you do it? So can someone tell me what are the infrastructure things that you use, or what are the test environments that you create when you are on a project?
Sorry to interrupt, Null. A quick time check. Are people okay to extend for a few more minutes?
You can do a thumbs up.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a thumbs down.
Thumbs up, chat.
Yeah.
Folks?
Silence will be taken as yes.
Okay, I see a couple of yes. So I assume rest as well. So Null, please go forward.
Thank you, Manogna. Thank you for that time check. And so you generally look after the test environments and the infrastructure that you need to create on various different things, right? So you might be having the ideal test environments, development, testing, staging, production. Now, if you are doing performance testing, would you be able to do it on the 4 environments that I just spoke about, or you need a different environment which is similar to your production environment? If it is not actually a production environment, but still fine, but proportionately scalable so that you can extrapolate your results to say that, I use this environment and this happens. Yeah. So I said UAT environment as staging. So yeah, you need all those environments. You need to list them. So, and it's not easy to build this when you are on a product or a project. You might have to get a lot of people involved to create environment. So anything that you write here, you need to go back and make sure that is happening. So the next one is the test data. So you have to talk about existing test data. What are the requirements? Am I mocking some test data? What are the dependencies? What are the concerns? So till now we are doing a quality strategy for a product. Now the product is gone, MVP, everything is successful. Now the management decided that, hey, we'll divide the microservices between 2 or 3 teams. Now, earlier, it's all the microservices are with you, 6 microservices, create whatever you want, destroy whatever you want, it's on you. But now there are 3 different teams. Are you able to get data from that team whenever you require? Say customer creation has went to some other team. Whenever you want to create a new customer, is it directly possible? Does the customer needs to go through an approval process? Like say, for example, as a customer, I create a new customer and I have to make sure I verify my email ID. How do you do that? Or is the companies or the other team is okay with it? Or you will end up creating 100,000 email IDs and every email ID every day. How do you do it? Do you mock it? So you have to think about all those from the test data point of view. And once you fill this, a very interesting part, metrics to measure. So we also have had some metrics that were listed here. And can someone tell me what metrics you ideally or generally measure? You don't measure any metrics in your
code coverage.
Okay, code coverage and
Automation percentage.
Okay, percentage of automation. And
Defect matrix.
Defect matrix.
Defect matrix. Defect matrix is a huge term. Any specific metrics and defect? I mean, there are so many defect metrics that this is an umbrella of things like defect lifetime, defect density. My favorite metric is defect density. So it's an umbrella. So deployment frequency, and there are the engineering 4 key metrics that you want to measure. So you have to think about them, what you're going to measure and how you're going to do it. And also think about, I put 10 metrics here. Think about, would these metrics help you to tell that you have tested the system sufficiently or is something missing? So that is one important aspect that you need to think about here. And you can add any number of metrics. We just have added few, and then just keep iterating on top of it. And tomorrow someone comes and asks, hey, now that you're measuring code coverage, percentage automation, defect metrics, deployment frequency, everything, can you give me what is your change failure percentage? So whenever you're making a change, it is getting failed when you're doing deployments. So you can keep adding that as well on the next iteration. So the next very important part is tools. You're gonna think about tools because tools are generally, it helps you a lot. At the same time, these are gonna get you a lot of headaches as well. Say for example, I want to use Selenium. Easy, I just go ahead and start writing code. But say for example, I want to use Apply tools. I have to buy a license. I have to get an approval to buy a license. And I don't know if someone who can easily plug in Apply tools into my Selenium code exists on the team. So these are all some of the things that you need to do. And also, why did I pick Selenium? I would have picked anything, right? I would have picked Cypress, I would have picked Test Cafe, I would have picked Playwright, I would have picked Nightjs, Nightwatch.js, WebDriver.js, sorry. What was that? So there are so many other tools out there. Why did I pick Selenium? So do you need to do a feasibility study on these tools? So yeah, these are some of the things that you need to think. So tools are not just automation tools, it's any tool that you're going to use for your testing. Maybe for example, to showcase your metrics on the dashboard, you're using Grafana directly from your automation suite. So Grafana would come into place. If you are using something like X-Ray or Zapier to plug in things with Jira, that would also come into place. So think about all the tools, think about whether you can directly use them or you need to get approvals or licenses. So that's what you would think about. So the next thing is defect management. What process you follow when you found a defect. So everyone can create their own defect management workflow or something that is depending on how do you want to do it. So ideally we follow these two things. Whenever a story is being tested, if a defect is found, we'll log the defect and we'll move that story back to ready for development. Once that is fixed, we'll retest and close the story. So here the defect is very closely associated with story testing. But when it comes to any production defects or regression defects or any defect that I accidentally found, so that defect would get logged. If it is critical, it will go for a direct fix, retest, and then we'll close the defect. But if it is not critical, we're going to triage the defects and we're going to slot these defects in different sprints, and then it goes back to the fixing, retesting, and closing the defect part. And nothing changes on your defect metrics or how do you look at the defect, but it would always be good to tell what would you give as an information when you're raising a defect. So very important information for me is steps to reproduce, because if I'm not going to give that, no one would understand how to reproduce this defect. So that's going to take away a lot of things. And the other things, severity, priority, screenshots or test data, description, etc. And associate this defect with any Jira parameters that you use, like release, feature, when did we fix this, etc., etc. If you use any of them in Jira already, but if you don't use, think about creating them very carefully, because in Agile environment, I never understood fixed in version. So Waterfall, it is very much valid. This was fixed in version 1.1, but Agile, I never got a sense of what that is. So that is this. So I think there are last two couple of parts. I'll take 2 minutes to talk about them. The next one is rights. You're gonna talk about what are the risks that you're, that you foresee going ahead with. Do you have any risks in approvals? Do you have any risks when it comes to skill constraints? So we wanted to use playwright, but does someone on the team know playwright? How much of learning curve does they have? What assumptions are you making? So I've been making a lot of assumptions when I'm doing this. I'm saying that, hey, load test will go and need to try us. But my underlying assumption is load test is not required for MVP. So you have to mention it there, because that is going to be very important for stakeholders. If they see this and if they feel that, hey, you're assuming wrong, who knows, your MVP is being done for 100 people, 1,000 people, or 10,000 people. So you still have to do a load test for 1,000 or 10,000, right? So that's an underlying assumption. Add that assumption here so that someone else could validate it. So your issues, so would it be an issue if some of my pipelines fail or some of the tests that I'm talking about fail? How would you look at it? And all of that. Any dependencies? So you might know, you're working in testing, you would have lots and lots of dependencies. It can be your test data, it can be your test tools, it can be your test runs, it can be your Chrome browser version that got upgraded recently, and we have never told that you have to support this version. Or maybe a new browser getting added, and we were never told that the other team is actually working on it. Until and unless they complete the work, we'll not be able to test it. So we are always dependent on that team. So any kind of dependency that you have, add all of that here so that your stakeholders can see, everyone can see this, and give you some information or get that risk or dependency or issue or assumption clarified. So that's this part. And any big action items that comes out of this, just add them and have an owner. Ideally, when we were doing this with teams, we have seen action items where they wanted to use something, like, say, for example, one team wants to do accessibility testing, but they don't know how to do. So they said, hey, can someone figure out how we can do accessibility testing, or can we get a session with someone who has already done that, or can we get an article or a blog where we can go and read and understand this? So this is where your action items would come into place. Note down all the action items and notes here. So everything would stay in one place. So that's all about what we have been doing in the quality strategy. It pretty much covers everything as a landscape, but it's not a test plan because we have never spoke about timelines here. We are always thinking about what is something that we want to achieve. That's what I told you at the start. The vision is to provide a quality product, and how, or what are the things that we're going to do. We are taking decisions on what to keep, what not to keep, how to do certain things like defect management, what tools to use, what metrics to measure, etc. So a lot of decision making is here. And if we go back, so this is definitely not talking about processes and tools. We are talking about individuals and how do they follow a particular quality approach in the team. So this is very close to Agile. You can keep making changes every day. No one is stopping you. Ideally, the ideate workshop happens only once, and then you formalize, evolve, implement, and evolve. As you evolve, you keep changing this. You can come any day onto this board and keep changing this data, like you change your stickies on the stand-up board. So that's one of the ideas, to keep it as a whiteboard exercise. Preeti and I, we were debating, hey, why not do an Excel sheet or a document? Because this is easy, this is close to people, so that they can just come and move. Say, for example, one day I came and I said, like, load test is no more need to try, let's move to should implement. I do that. I tell the team, hey, I moved this, let's start working on this. So that's how things happen. So this is very close to the Agile principles, and no lot of documentation. This itself acts as a documentation for everyone.
One
So
of the fundamental problems with test strategies or even test plans is that they are highly documented, and nobody likes that, right? Many of us don't like to write documentation or even, go through so much content. And especially when it comes to updation, we write it once and then we forget about it. The same thing happens with test strategy also. So we found this approach to be very useful because it's very visual, and it's easy to move around cards, as Null said. Also, consider a situation, right, where there is a shift going on in your team. New people are coming in, existing people are rolling off. It's very easy for them to go through it and understand that, okay, in this team we follow unit testing, integration testing, and E2E testing. So this is what I am supposed to do when I am working in this team, or this is a template on how to write your defects or something like that. So in that way, it was very comprehensive and very useful for us.
yes. Cool. Coming to the summary, involve the entire team, ask right questions, keep iterating, and finally, how you do it doesn't matter. So we have created a mural whiteboard. You do it with stickies if you are working in a physical office, and keep that board as is with the cards and all of it, like a stand-up board that you would have if you're working on an agile team in an office, so that you could see it every day and you can move things. And or maybe you can use a Word doc. The only reason why we didn't use a Word doc is because it looks like a document. Or you can do it in a different way. So how you do it, it doesn't really matter, but what you do and what is that it's going into the implementation is something that really matters when you're doing a quality strategy. So, and also one learning that I had when Preeti and we have been facilitating this to 25-30 odd teams. What we learned is, don't try to do everything on day one. As we said, you have to keep iterating on top of it. If I identify 100 items, I would definitely not get to time to work on 100 items, because my entire project team is definitely not working only on the testing part. They have to develop, they have to deploy, they have to make sure that they're verifying their backups, they're making sure the system is ready in case of any disaster and other things as well. So you'll not be able to do 100 things. So start with 10 important things, keep iterating on top of them. Preeti, anything?
No, I said what I had to say. Yeah.
Cool, then. Thank you so much for being here, and we are already late by 22 minutes than the scheduled time. Sorry for that. I hope you people have learned something from this. We are open for questions and feedback. Over to Anand.
So that's really a great talk, Preeti and Null. So before closing the session, we would like to sincerely thank all of you who attended this 10th edition of our vodQA. Right from everybody from our ThoughtWorks who worked as organizers to make this event successful. Our speakers, Preeti and Null, for your effort in preparing the content and delivering it today. And most importantly, our audience, for all your active participation. And yeah, I would like to get feedback from you all regarding this session. Manojna will post the link in the chat. Please leave your feedback in the given form. Your positive feedback stays like an encouragement to us, and your constructive feedback definitely helps us to improve in the next sessions. And also, we'll share this session's PPT and the session's recording to you all via mail. Yeah, thanks everyone.